Welcome to my top table at the Waitrose Cookery School. My next guest is the pig farmer's son from Yorkshire, who became one of the first of the modern chefs to make TV his natural home. Here's James Martin. James.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Good to see you. I don't know about natural home, but you know.
Well, you took to it very naturally. That's what I always think when I watch you. I don't know on the Saturday show. You've got a very easy manner, which, you know, it's kind of a gift in a sense, because most people are daunted by it to start with. I mean, you get better and better, but it just seemed to me from the beginning that you had that ease with it. And more extraordinary because you're dyslexic too.
I think, to be honest, that helped, I suppose, more than anything else.
Why?
Certainly early on, because it focused my attention in my career, what I wanted to do. So, you know, I wasn't very good at maths, I wasn't very good at English, failed all my exams at school, failed cookery at school, because I couldn't do it. So then part of me just said, oh, well, Shakespeare, what possible good is he to me in my career? It's probably a Yorkshire thing to say, but I wasn't interested.
Yes.
So I focused my attention on two things. It was art and food. And I could paint a picture, I could draw something, I could model out of clay. But my granddad and my family turned around and said, well, all the wealthy artists are all dead. Get yourself in the kitchen. And that was it, really. So and that was it. I was a chef, but I knew what I wanted to do I remember, 8 years old.
Well, I mean, you had the perfect background for an ambition, didn't you? On the farm, Castle Howard as well.
I think farming helped. I think Castle Howard, you really don't appreciate it until you leave. And you go back and you think, wow, that's amazing. And to think I used to skateboard down the long gallery in front of these Holbeins worth 30, 40 million pound on easels and used to be whizzing around on a skateboard. But it was an amazing time and very fortunate time, hard working time, because farming is really tough.
Yeah.
And I think you get an understanding by being a chef about the value of ingredients and about the quality and the work that goes into it. And you learn to respect food a lot more when you understand how hard it is to produce it.
And eventually you persuaded your father you should leave home, and much against his will, because he thought it should be a proper job, wasn't it?
Yeah, proper job. You know, the Yorkshireman. My granddad said I had to play cricket and get a proper job and play cricket. My dad, none of my family actually held me back from my dreams, but they didn't want me to sort of go out to outside of Yorkshire, if you know what I mean. The comfort of your family and your home and, you know, coming back every day was quite important to them.
Yes.
And I think because we had a pig farm as well, and I think in the back of my mind he's thinking, well, I'm going to have to employ 2 people now because he's clearing off. But I remember the last thing he ever told me when he put £20 in my hand when I disappeared off to London said, clear off, I don't want to see you. He said it a little bit harsher than that, but clear off, I don't want to see you again for 2 years. And my first ever trip to London was when I got off the train at King's Cross, thinking, what do I do? Jumped in a taxi and spent half of it getting a damn cab ride to the restaurant. But it was an amazing
that was Anthony
experience.
Warren Thompson's restaurant.
Yeah, that was a busy restaurant. I remember that particular time the commitments were huge. The band commitments.
Yeah.
And I remember walking in and Shirley Bassey was in the queue to get into the restaurant. And the commitments were singing on the bar going, this is surreal, what am I doing here? And I never saw daylight, I'll be honest with you, for 2 years.
Really?
My mother came down I think it was about 3 months after I went down there. And no word of a lie, she looked at me straight in my eye and I walked straight past her and she didn't know it was me. I lost about 5 stone. I was literally this thin, dark rings underneath my eyes. I was like some creature from the Amazon that you just suddenly uncovered, because I never saw daylight for 2 years. I just worked so hard, not just there, but elsewhere.
And the ambition all the time, the driving ambition, was to be head chef by the time you're 22.
Yeah, I was.
You achieved.
I was quite fortunate, really. I did my stint in London, and then I wanted to work in a really nice hotel and come out of London because, you know, I wasn't earning money. I was £5,000 a year, I think. My rent was £6,000. My mum used to send me vouchers for another supermarket to go and get ready-made food because I couldn't afford to eat. So my mum used to, you know, send them down in the post to me because I didn't eat. I applied for several jobs, managed to get a pastry chef's job at the Chewton Glen, and then it really snowballed from there. Because of that, the general manager and the head sommelier left, set up a business called the Hotel de Van. I was a young nipper. I was 22 years old. They said, well, we want you as the sous chef first. And they interviewed the chefs for the job. the actual owners of the hotel turned around and said, actually, no, give him a go and actually see what he thinks. And this was the original owners of the hotel,
Yes,
the Chewton
the
Glen.
first one.
The Chewton Glen, yeah. They said to the owners of the hotel event, said, well, give James a shot at see what he thinks of making this dish. And I cooked this dish, and within 2 hours I was head chef, and that was it.
And good publicity. So down comes the TV producer. Did she actually say to you, this TV producer, I'm going to make you a star?
The truth is, they had Keith Floyd came down, and he was looking for somewhere to do, because obviously Floyd being Floyd, he was looking for somewhere location. It's never really planned, all that sort of stuff. Now I realise what TV is all about. You just make it up as you go along, particularly with food. But it was never really planned. So they used part of the kitchen, and then in the evening they said, you know, can we have something to eat? And anyway, we gave them this risotto at the bar and this dessert, and she said, have you got a card? And I said, well, not really, no. I said, have you got an agent? I went, I know an estate agent over there, over the road, but I can't afford a house. And that was it, really. That's how she then sent down a chauffeur-driven car for me. First time I've ever been in a chauffeur-driven car, up to London. And the rest is history. It just went crazy.
Extraordinary. Just at one meeting, it's changed everything. It would have happened in any case.
Well, I don't know whether it would, you know,
would.
because I think food was evolving. It was going at 100 miles an hour, but television, it was there, but not to the extent certainly not what it is now.
Mm. What about I mean, we'll talk about your restaurants in just a moment, but you've used your fame and your ability as a chef to actually try to change something important, and that's hospital food. I know the campaign's been going for a while. Is it still ongoing?
It's one of those things that we had a meeting, and it was actually not my idea. It was a lady called Carla Maria Lawson, who's the head of the BBC daytime, and she said, what about hospitals? What do you think? And I remember seeing my grandmother in hospital, and she was a huge inspiration in my life. And I say, even now, if I could be 10% of what my grandmother was, I would be 110% better person in doing what I'm doing. She was just so fantastic. Mm-hmm. And to see her, I suppose, suffer in hospital, but I was only 15, 16 at the time. And then I thought, well, I've got to do something, you know, if only to help the NHS, or just something. I don't know what I can do. So I said, right. I said to them, I'm not going down with a placard and going for more money and anything else like that. That's not how to change things. To throw money at it doesn't change anything.
Yes.
So they said, well, if we put you in a hospital, can we just film you and see what you think? And we actually genuinely applied to every hospital in Britain, and the last throw of the dice, because everybody said no, was Scarborough.
Yes.
And it was where I went to college. It was right next door. And that was it. And a huge effort with the catering team there, run by Pat, who's still working there. We managed to turn it from, well, one of the worst performing hospitals in terms of food in the area to now in the top 10 in Britain.
It gives a real purpose to your job as well, doesn't it, really?
It is fascinating. You know, it means a lot when you walk into a hospital ward, or I was in the hospital the other week, and somebody comes up to you and said, you know, my wife's passed away, but thank you very much for everything you've done. Do you know what I mean? That just means everything that you've done for the last 25 years is worth every bit of hard work, and it still is. I just love it. You know. So
where are you now then in your empire? Let's now look at the empire.
No idea. No idea. No idea.
You've got a steakhouse now in Manchester, which apparently is doing incredibly well.
The steakhouse we opened last year is doing very, very well. We've got the restaurant, the fine dining restaurant, really got a huge lease of life last year, because we opened it beginning of the year before, at the end of the year before. It's a 26-bedroom hotel, lovely hotel called the Talbot.
Malton.
Yeah, called the Talbot, my hometown. I used to cycle past that hotel every single day on my way to school. And then when the owners decided to refurbish and everything else, and walked in, there was dead pigeons in the area. I mean, it was just, there was a caravan burnt out in the grounds in the grounds because they sublet it. But the owners took it on board and they said, "This is what we want to do. Give it a real vision and a focus." And it was phenomenal for us, you know. Jay Rayner said it was the best meal that he'd eaten in 2013.
Oh, really?
One of the top 3 best main courses he'd ever eaten in his life.
Which was?
Which was this beef dish that we do, braised beef cheeks. But everything's still with the farming background, because the farm where I was brought up is 5 miles away from the hotel. So
right.
There's a very much focus, and there's a lot said about local produce. But I'm a great fan of the UK as a whole. You know, local produce is great, but don't forget Scotland. It's got the best raspberries in the world. Don't forget, you know, the Northern Ireland, the best seafood in the world. You know, you shouldn't forget all these different places.
What about Yorkshire?
well, it's God's own country, isn't it? It's just,
I know that, but
it's just the greatest place ever made.
But I wouldn't disagree at all. Now we can continue this conversation along these lines if you like. So, what are we going to eat today?
Well,
let me guess.
Well, you had a list, you see, and the list was quite short. The title Yorkshire was at the top of it, so I thought I'd do a dish that was a little bit of controversy because Chris Evans was on the radio about 2 weeks ago, and he was going on and on about a Yorkshire pudding and how to make it. So, funny enough, he actually got two chefs that as far south from Yorkshire as you possibly can. The great Tom Kerridge, who I know and love. Yeah. But I was listening to it on the radio, and I'm thinking, what to come and cook you. And I was listening to Tom Kerridge going on and on about consomme and stuff with Yorkshire pudding. And I'm listening to this thing in the shower, and I'm getting more and more annoyed. Next minute, you had Mark Sargent on, who couldn't get any further south, his restaurant, otherwise he'd be in the ocean. He runs a restaurant way down south, going on about Yorkshire pudding again. I said, why haven't you got a guy on about Yorkshire pudding? So I picked up the phone and ranted and raved to say that my grandmother makes the best Yorkshire pudding. So that's what I'm going to do for you now with a proper gravy.
The moment I've been waiting for. Master demonstration of how to cook a Yorkshire pudding.
A Yorkshire pudding?
Authentic.
Authentic Yorkshire. Well, I thought you'd probably know how to make an authentic Yorkshire pudding.
Well, I would, but it wouldn't look like this. I could tell. What is all this palaver?
Well, this is an onion soup that we're going to serve. Cream of onions, they would call it down south. We just call it onion gravy. The difference is 28 quid, of course. But this is a proper onion gravy that I'm going to serve with my Yorkshire pudding, but we're going to turn it into a soup as well.
All right.
So the first thing we're going to do is get our Yorkshire pudding on the go. So all I've got in there is sweated onions. I'll get to that in a minute. But this is where it's quite controversial because my grandmother always used more eggs. So to 8 eggs, 8 ounces of flour and a pint of milk. Right? So what you do with this, first of all, is you throw in the plain flour. It's got to be good quality plain flour. Yep. Throw in the eggs, medium-sized eggs. They would go in, and you just basically chuck them all in. And then you just whisk this together. Now, always make Yorkshire puddings by hand, never by machine. It toughens up the gluten in the flour. All right. And that's why it's another excuse why your Yorkshire puddings won't rise. But mix it by hand is much better. So mix this all together like that. And also, it doesn't matter about the lumps. So don't be beating it too much to get rid of all the lumps at this stage. You can see that. So the more you mix this, the tougher the mixture becomes, and the more restrained it'll be when it's cooked in the oven. And then full fat milk.
Full fat, right.
Yeah. None of that semi-skimmed stuff.
No, that stuff. No.
We didn't even have yogurt on the farm. So full fat. And we mix all that lot together. Now, it's really important at this stage, once you've mixed it, is to leave it to rest. Mm-hmm. All right, it's really the key to making Yorkshire puddings well, because to get them really shiny on the top and risen up, you need to put this in the fridge. And this is where, obviously, Yorkshire puddings on a Sunday, you would make this on a Saturday, stick it in the fridge, and leave it, ideally overnight, and you'd end up with this. So basically, that mixture goes to that. Right. When it changes colour, but it's the fats that separate out on the top.
Right.
See? And then still get your whisk. Don't whisk this up too much, and just mix this together. Ever so carefully. Again, don't beat it up too much. And then you've got in the oven, we've got these trays, but this is really the key to this. Dripping. Now, if you haven't got... that made you smile, that, didn't it? But this, I remember my granny used to have a bowl like this. We used to have the dripping on the top and the jelly underneath.
And got ball on toast, eh? They said, don't go mining. They got mining, didn't they?
Don't go and go hunting for the jelly as well. But you basically put that inside the trays. Nowadays, you got fancy goose fat and duck fat, but dripping is the best. All right? So beef dripping you can get. And so what you do is you just get this in the oven. This is set at 200 degrees centigrade. Very, very hot oven. Sits in there for 10 minutes. And then you're going to use one of these little fancy little mats. And it should make that sizzling noise. When you put them in. These will come up about here.
What, immediately?
No. It's not got any baking powder in there, but these will come up in about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, they'll rise up. So you don't touch the oven temperature, 200 degrees, quite a hot oven. Stick them in there. Now the golden rule is with this, because this is quite a small oven, domestic ovens, in a big sort of restaurant oven, you're fine.
Yeah.
the steam that's created on this will actually cause them to rise up, but it'll be negative when it gets so much steam in there. It'll actually cause them to push them down. So after 20 minutes, open the oven door, close it. That's it, just for 2 seconds. Don't slam the door. That'll get rid of the steam, but crisp up the outside.
All right.
All right?
Excellent.
So I'm going to serve this with a proper gravy. All right? So I've got onions going on in here. So this is just about 3 onions browning off in our pan. And then we just take some garlic. So just finely chopped. And then we can throw that in as well. So the reason why you don't put the garlic in at the beginning, because it burns and it'll make it go bitter.
Yeah.
So all we do is we heat this up and get that so really browning nicely.
Yeah.
And then we're going to throw in some sugar and some white wine, which is the cue for you to pour as a glass each.
Oh, right. Just, right. And how much does this wine go in there at all?
No, that goes in us.
It goes in us.
Yeah, and then the other...
Nice amount to share.
Yeah, well, I thought, well, seeing as we're 2 Yorkshiremen in London and we're not paying the bill...
Somebody else bought it.
Somebody else, I thought we'd choose a fantastic...
Good health, chef.
Little bit of that. Pour us another glass. That'll go in there. And then we got some of this. This is sherry. Do you like sherry?
No.
All right. Not do I, but it goes in the food. But this works really well in there, all right? Bit of that. And then this is the key to this. So as well as we've got the great wine, we've got some of this.
And this is?
Well, my mother wouldn't use this when I was...
But now,
well, now she's got... Now we've got trendy up north. We've actually got electricity now, haven't we? No. But it's good quality stuff. That's the key to it. And as you put it in and cook this and reduce this down, and this is the whole thing about sauces like this. If you use a cube, as you reduce it down, it won't thicken because it's basically powder.
Yeah.
You need the gluten in the bones to turn it into a gelatinous liquid. So as you reduce it down, it's quality of the sauce. So you get what you pay for with this, really. And you bring this to the boil, and we cook this for about 10 minutes.
Oh, I see. And that's what you reduce it down to.
Yeah, so you end up with this sort of gravy, as you can see, right? And then all we do now is get a pot to put it in, like that. And you lift this out. And this is going to go with our Yorkshire pudding as well.
Yeah.
These Yorkshire puddings, by the way, take about sort of 40 minutes in the oven. And don't be poncy. Don't get the dish too sort of... Don't wipe all this lot off. That's the best bit when you scrape it. And then normally, if I was at home, I'd use white sliced bread. But this is your kitchen, so... We've got some form of some Italian ciabatta, whatever it is. Bit of that on there. That's all we want. And then a pile of Gruyere cheese.
It's fantastic.
See, just when you thought you've had enough, put more on. That's what it should be, like that. Pile it all up, like that. And put it so it just dribbles around the pan like that. We've got a little bit of the sauce left for our Yorkshire puddings. And all we do is stick this under the grill for about 2 minutes. This is your French onion soup. You know, served how it should be served, you know, with all the best bits stuck to the edge. And then you've got your Yorkshire puddings.
They're wonderful.
This is what it's all about. Look at that.
That's marvellous.
Now, you just put, obviously, you know, you can serve 1, 2, but that's like a Yorkshire petit four, isn't it, really?
I know
Proper.
that. Yeah.
And then you basically just take the gravy and your sauce, and there's no fancy stuff over this, just pour it over the top. Hopefully it's as good as what you wanted. When you asked me to do it.
Well, that's the thing about it. It's light. It feels light, but so it's not soggy.
Well, it should be crunchy on the outside, I think, soggy in the middle, don't you think?
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah, it's a good taste. That's one. Are we two doing this as well? What?
Yeah. The true tester, is it as good as your wife's recipe?
Yes. It's very different from my wife's recipe.
You're in trouble when you get back home.
No, you've given it a totally different dimension.
How are you going to tell her to use that recipe from now on?
I'm going to leave home first. Then.